Hey, what's up, guys? As I had promised, this would be my analysis of Mshololo's cross-examination with Tumelo. Hopefully, we'll go the full 9 yards. Let's tune in.
The court business, my lord. Mr. Madlala, have you testified in court before? No, I mean before this incident, have you ever testified in any court, whether it's a lower court, small claims court, high court?
I'm going to testify.
I've never testified in court before.
Okay. It's your first time now?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's my first time.
And then when you are testifying, Mr. Madlala, I am putting questions to you and you are expected to give answers. Do you understand that?
Uyabona uma uthi ubufakazi bakho yimina ubuza imibuzo kanti kulindeleke ukuthi wena ke uphendule leyo mibuzo.
So that you don't find yourself asking me questions, because I'm not the one who is giving answers.
Ungazoyithola ke usubuza uadvocate imibuzo lapha ngoba ke akusiwuyena ophana ngeimpendulo. Yazwa?
Kunzima ngiyakuzwa kodwa.
It is difficult. I can hear you, but it is difficult.
Unfortunately, it's the procedure that we have to follow when you are testifying in court under cross-examination.
Ngeshwa ke iyona ndlela ke okanye inkambo yala enkantolo uma ngabe uthula ubufakazi bakho la enkantolo.
If you want me to repeat the question, you must just tell me to repeat the question.
Uma ngabe ke uyathanda ukuthi ngibuze ufuna ukuthi ngiphinde le umbuzo ungakwenza lokho.
Yebo ngiyakuzwa.
I hear you, advocate.
Okay. And the reason,
So basically, what Mshololo is saying is that she's the only one who's supposed to ask questions and the witness is supposed to answer. And the last part, she just clarified that if the witness has a clarity-seeking question, he could simply ask her to repeat the question. Now, that's not the same thing, because my expectation was for her to say that if you did not hear what I said, you could ask me to repeat, and if you have a clarity-seeking question. You see, the issue of the clarity-seeking question leads to what many would perceive to be witnesses being rude to the advocate. When an advocate, for an example, asks a question, and we'll get to that in her questions, asks a question, but you can see that this question is misleading, then the witness has a right, in my view, in terms of our constitution, in terms of freedom of speech, to literally ask, what do you mean by that? Can you clarify it further? You get the point? Now, you can't clarify if you are simply asking what you did not hear. Clarity is not saying, I beg your pardon. Clarity is saying, I heard you clearly, however, do you mean this by that, or what do you mean by that? Okay, let's proceed.
Madlala, why you are before this court? It's because we want to find out from you what transpired on the date of the incident.
Manje isizathu esenza ukuthi wena uthole ube la enkantolo namhlanje sifuna ukwazi ukuthi kwenzakalani ngalolo suku lesigameko.
Yebo ngiyazwa.
Yes, I can hear that.
We know what has been said by other witnesses in their statements.
Siyazi ukuthi wakhulunywa ngabanye ofakazi batheni kuma statement wabo lokho siyakwazi.
We know what those who have testified have said before this court.
Nalabo ke abathule ubufakazi babo la enkantolo siyazi ukuthi nabo batheni.
So if I happen to refer you to the evidence of the witness, it's because I want you to comment on your own as a person who was there inside the house when the incident took place.
Uma ngithatha ngibuyisa ke kwingxenye ethize yobufakazi bomuntu othize ngithanda nje ukuthi wena okanye ngifisa ukuthi wena ukwazi ukukhuluma ngokwakho ukuthi ke ubufakazi bakho buthini mayelana ke nalokho kwenzeka ngelanga lesigameko uma usuthathanisa nalokho okukhulunywa nalaba abanye. Uyazwakala?
Ngithanda ukudideka mathi advocate ngizokhomenta mengifundela into zabanye abantu.
I get a bit confused when the advocate is saying that she will be referring me to the statements of other people It's going to be difficult.
kuzoba nzima ukuthi ngiphendule into eyabhala omunye umuntu.
It will be difficult for me to answer what was written by someone else.
But eyami kuzoba lula ukuthi ngiziphendulele because into eqondene nami.
Where mine is concerned, it will be easy for me to can respond to it because it has to do with me.
Okay. Let's.
And what Mtoko's is, what Tumelo, because this is Tumelo Madlala's cross-examination. What Tumelo is saying here is consistent with, strangely enough, what is written in the Constitution. That is why I believe these guys have been somewhat coached. It's consistent with what is written in our Constitution. Remember, Section 35 of the Constitution of the Republic says that a person who has been, and Tumelo here has not been arrested, but if this is a right given to a person who's been arrested, how much more about a person like Tumelo who's not been arrested? He's a witness in this case. Let me show it to you. Now, as I've already said, these are rights to look at Section 35 or paragraph 35. Arrested, detained, and accused persons. Obviously, Tumelo is not arrested and he's not accused and he's not a detained person. He's a witness in the case. Now, why am I showing you this? I'm showing you this that if a person who's arrested, detained, and accused has these rights, how much more about witnesses, right? Now, the person has a right to remain silent, to be informed promptly of the right to remain silent and of the consequences of not remaining silent. Now, not to be compelled to make any confession or admission that could be used in evidence against the person. You see that? Okay, let's go to paragraph 35, subparagraph 3, and specifically J. It says not to be compelled to give self-incriminating evidence. Do you see that? So why then would you want to comment on other people's written statements, particularly to the extent that they differ with yours? Can you see that how that would be self-incriminating evidence? So I understand perfectly why Tumelo insists, and Mtokozi did the same thing when he was in court as well. I understand perfectly why they insist, because somebody has coached them. To me, that's pretty clear. Why they insist that I will not comment on other people's statements. Question me on what I have said. And to me, that seems reasonable. That seems within the ambit of the law to ask me based on what I have reduced in writing and signed as a statement. Even though, however, there may be discrepancies with these statements in terms of when did the person complete the statement, what was added by the police officer at what point in time. You will see this. It becomes a play, it comes into play into this testimony that Tumelo is giving here.
Let's go step by step, Mr. Madlala. You'll see what I'm saying.
Okay.
Ake sithathe nje isinyathelo ngesinyathelo. Uzobona-ke ukuthi manga. Understood.
And
No
I want,
problem.
and I want to believe that you have passed the matric.
Mine is concerned, it will be easy for me to can respond to it because it has to do with me.
Okay. Let's go step by step, Mr. Madlala. You'll see what I'm saying.
Okay.
Ake sithathe nje isinyathelo ngesinyathelo. Uzobona-ke ukuthi manga. Understood.
And
No
I want,
problem.
and I want to believe that you have passed the matric, your matric, Mr. Madlala, so that I know which level do I engage you in terms of the questions, the line of questioning.
Cabanga-ke ukuthi uma tikilotsheni umphasile-ke ngikwazi ukuthi nami mangibuza imibuzo-ke okanye mangikhulumisana nawe lapho ngikwazi ukuthi kumele ngihlale kweliphi izinga-ke lokubuza imibuzo.
I suppose the witness doesn't have to answer that question.
Which metric are you referring to? The one which you pass with 30%? Or the one which I did about 50 years ago?
No, I think from the age of the witness, it's the current one.
I see, okay.
Yes.
Yes, let's continue.
My qualifications, I don't think a witness, I think witness ngabe lumba owayekhona no akufanele ukuthi kuzoba umuntu ofundile as long as ukhona witness. But le yokufunda I understand this guy advocate.
Where qualifications are concerned, as long as you're a witness, as long as you were there when the incident transpired. But as far as education or your academic qualifications are concerned, I don't understand you there, Advocate.
No problem, Mr. Madla.
Okay, the issue of the highest level of education. The judge, I see that he made a joke out of it because of, I think he made a joke precisely because initially he had disallowed this question when Mshololo had asked from the same witness for cross-examination. In fact, even in the previous witness, that is Mtogozis. But the point I want to make here is, as a matter of fact, rather than just making the point, let me show it to you. There is this word that I want to introduce to you, just in case you didn't know about it. If you do, I'm happy for you. The word is assimilate. What does assimilate mean? It means to take in and understand fully information or ideas. You see that? To take in and understand fully information or ideas. Okay, I'm going with somewhere with this, bear with me. Okay, now that you have in mind the word assimilate, I just want to take you through the Employment Equity Act, right, of 1998, paragraph 20, subparagraph 3, just to show you the relevance why Mshololo keeps on referring to your highest qualification. Once the judge squashed it, I don't believe the squashing was a valid squashing, and you're gonna see shortly why. It says here, for the purposes, that is subparagraph 3, for the purposes of this act, a person may be suitably qualified for a job as a result of any one of or any combination of that person's formal qualifications, prior learning, relevant experience, or capacity to acquire. That's assimilation. Within a reasonable time, the ability to do the job. Can you see that? This has landed government into a serious problem in many instances for people who have understood the law. Because this basically saying, how are you going to test this capacity to acquire the ability to do the job within a reasonable period of time? Well, for those who are in the know, you will know, or who keep themselves informed, you'll know that government has since developed something that is called the School of National Governance. And they've come up with myriads of psychometric tests to be able to determine the individual's ability to assimilate knowledge, for which particularly for what they call SMS structure. So you go to a 3-day tests prior to you being employed, which is quite exhaustive tests if you look into the syllabus that is being asked there. So bravo on them on that they've been able to say a person's formal qualification, it's a combination of person's formal qualification, prior learning, relevant experience, or capacity to acquire within a reasonable period of time the ability to do the job. So the person's IQ must be pretty high for them not to have the qualifications but yet have the ability to do the job. The point is this: in court, when you are asked certain questions, as you will see in this dialogue between Mshololo and the witness, there are so many instances where the witness, Tumelo, is not understanding what Mshololo is saying. As a result, he results being sarcastic. That's not good for him. You get the point? That's not good for him. But most importantly, it's not good for the case, because the judge is fully aware of Tumelo's ability to assimilate knowledge. Even though he has squashed that, he is clearly, evidently aware of that, and therefore, because of that ability, he then has not assisted Mshololo to adjust her questions, because what Mshololo is saying is, I want to adjust my level of questioning so that it gets to your level of understanding. And then you hear the prosecutor, the state, saying, no, my lord, I don't believe my client has to answer that question. They have to answer that question because it assists the case to saying that once you ask a higher grade questions to a standard grade student or a lower grade student, that student is not one going to assimilate that knowledge. And therefore, when they answer, they are answering to the best of their ability. Okay? and therefore they are obviously going to fail. You have mismatched a student that you have placed at a higher grade, and yet they are a standard grade student. They are going to fail. Somebody that could have gotten an A in mathematics at standard grade is now going to get an H or an F or whatever the case may be. Can you see that? This is exactly why Mshololo keeps on asking this question. The ability to assimilate knowledge, even today, as I have already said, in the public sector, is now being tested. Why? Because there is something called what is your level of knowledge vis-a-vis what you have to do or vis-a-vis what you have to be asked. That Employment Equity Act that I was showing you is an example. I hope you people understand. Once again, it's going to depend on your cognition, okay? Your ability to assimilate knowledge. And this is very, very important. Let's move on then with the case.
Stand you there, advocate.
No problem, Mr. Madlala. If you have not passed matric, there is no problem. Let's proceed. We'll see.
Mangabe awuphasanga matric asiqhubeke akunankinga.
Angawuphasa uthi ngisheshe ngikusho alikho iclass
Thank you.
engakaphinda neli-1.
I did, and I did not fail even one grade. I did pass my matric, not even one class did I have to repeat.
Thank you very much. You know, if you're going to give positive answers like that, we're just going to be very short.
Yabona ke uma ngabe uzophana ke ngeimpendulo ezinjalo ezimfishane kanjalo nathi soba bafishane kanjalo.
You testified, Mr. Madlala, that you were a friend to the deceased. Am I correct?
Usho kanjalo ukuthi ubungumngani kumufi.
Kuyiqiniso lokho.
That is the truth.
And for a long period of
Kade
time.
side ningabangani.
Yebo kunjalo.
Yes, it is indeed so.
Am I correct to think that you were in good terms with the deceased at the time of his death?
Ngenkathi eshona benisazwana kahle naye.
Yes, asikaze singazwani nje.
We were never in bad terms or in bad blood before.
That is important because it does, to a certain extent or degree, eliminate him from being a prime suspect. Now, it will not automatically eliminate him, but it does take him to a point where he was in good terms with Senzo. Therefore, what was the motive? Kind of a thing. You get the point? It's a very important question that Mshololo is asking there. And the answer that he's giving also is actually good for him as a witness. Let's proceed.
Can you describe, okay, sorry, can you just rephrase my word? Would you discuss with the deceased as a friend of the deceased about love relationships one will have, yours and the deceased one?
Njengomngani nomufi benikwazi ukuthi ngingaxoxisana ke naye ngixoxe nje ngendaba zothando.
And about the girlfriends you had, you know, those sort of friendship.
Benixoxa into enjalo.
Yebo, besixoxa.
Yes, we would discuss such.
Okay. Have you also discussed the nature of the relationship, or did you know the nature of the relationship between the deceased and Ms. Khumalo?
Ubukwazi ke kwakwenzakala nike okanye ubudlelwano babukhona phakathi komufi no Ms. Khumalo. Ngakwazi ukuqaqisa lapho.
Ya bengazi ukuthi baya jola. If ngayibeka kanjalo bengazi ukuthi bayajola.
Yes, I knew that they were in a love relationship of Ayajola.
Do you know if they had any problems or if they had encountered any problems?
Ubukwazi ke ukuthi mhlambe inkinga nje ingcinama ezazikhona mhlambe elokhunjana edlelweni babo.
Angeke ngakhuluma ke lokho ezinye into zenzekile ngaphambilini engafuni futhi mina.
Well, I cannot answer that one. There are certain things that transpired previously that has got nothing to do with me that I cannot answer.
It's a very cunning question that was given to a cunning answer. What do I mean? There's a trick in the question, and the way the answer by Tumelo was given is very smart. Why? What Mshololo is trying to get to, have you observed Senzo and Kaylee fighting? Were there any squabbles amongst them? There is a place where she's driving to find out who had a motive. This may also, of course, go to the conspiracy, but it would be established via the follow-up questions that would come up there. Even the avoidance of the question in terms of answer may, of course, be argued by those who are in the law profession to say, no, he was being honest, it is none of his business. But of course, if he has observed something, it may be seen that he's covering for Kelly. There are many ways in which you can look at this, but the point is that the question is trying to unearth, were there any squabbles? That may, of course, be the root cause for the motive as to why Senzo died on that day. Now, his answer is that, well, there are many things that happened, but they are not for me to say. Right there, he is saying to the court, I do know about certain activities that may have taken place between them, but I'm unwilling to divulge those to the court. That leaves a question in Mshololo's mind, and you will see when she literally gets to a point towards the end of a cross-examination where she is saying to the witness, Tumelo, that the NPA has not cancelled or abandoned prosecuting you. They have literally stayed their prosecution subject to this inquiry. If they perceive that you have given an honest witness in this case, then they will not prosecute you going forward. Do you understand that? She literally gets to that in this evidence. And in my view, the reason why she gets to that is answers like this one that has just been given here. Once again, it's important for Tumelo to have said here, I know about them having a love relationship, but to my knowledge, there were no problems that I knew about. If there were problems, because he's under oath, he is supposed to tell the court without saying it's none of my business. Either you have observed that there were problems or you haven't observed that there were problems. He just gave an impression now that he did observe the problems, but is unwilling to tell that to the court. Now, what business is it of his to tell those problems? One may ask, well, you are under oath and someone is dead. We're trying to get to the truth. What business is it of yours to want to hide that? What are you hiding? Have you been paid money to keep quiet? Bear all of those possibilities in mind. So that is what is playing now in Mshololo's mind. That's what is playing in the judge's mind as well. Let us proceed.
And you further testified that you came to visit Senzo, the deceased, on the 26th of October when the incident took place.
Wakusho-ke ukuthi ubuzovakashela umufi makuzokwenzeka lesi sigameko nge-26 ka-October 2014.
Yebo kunjani.
It is so, yes.
Did you know where the deceased was staying at that time? When you came to visit him?
Mawuzomvakashela kanjalo ngaleso sikhathi ubukwazi ukuthi bebehlala kuphi?
Ya bengazi mangingaphosisi mhlawumbe sengivakashe kathathu.
Yes, I knew where he was residing. If I'm not mistaken, I had already visited him about 3 times.
Okay, where had you visited him?
Ubumvakashela kuphi mawuzomvakashela?
Sengisho entweni yakhe ehlangene noKelly la bebehlala khona eMalbathini.
In their affair with Kelly, where they were residing in Malbaton.
Ngivakashe endaweni eziningi akahlala kuzona uSenzo. Sengisho la esehlala khona noKelly bekuyise eMalbathini.
Now I had visited Senzo on various residential places. I'm now referring to where he was residing with Kelly, that is in Malbaton.
How many times had you visited the deceased in Joburg? If you can recall. If you can't recall, there is no harm. Just tell the court you can't recall.
I visited him in Winchester and Berkeley as well, and Malbaton as well.
Okay. Where last had you visited him?
Malbaton.
For how many times?
Now, before he even answers that many times, that was Mshololo's initial question. How many times have you visited the deceased in Johannesburg? His answer is, I visited him in Winchester, in Malbaton, and in Park. But that's not the question. But nevertheless, I don't want to amplify and make a lot out of that, but bear that in mind. Remember, the person was asked, what is your highest level of education? Now, many people may not pay attention to this level of detail. You are going to see a lot of things that Tumelo has not been properly answering here. This is just one of them. It's a simple example, but pay attention to it.
I think we are tattoo manginali puti.
If I'm not mistaken, 3 times.
Okay. So you were acquainted with Miss Kelly Khumalo?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Okay. Whose place was it at Malberton? If you know.
Bengazi ukuthi indawo yasenzo mina.
I knew it to be Senzo's place.
Okay. And it is your evidence that at the hospital, after the incident had taken place, midnight, you did not have a place to sleep. As a result, you went with Miss Kelly Khumalo and Zali to Malberton. Am I correct?
Ngabe ke ngiqinisekile ke or ngiqinisekile uma ngithi okanye ngiqinisile uma ngithi wena ngalobo busuku ngekhathi nisesibhedlela mase nisuka esibhedlela ubungesenayo ke indawo yokuyolala ngalokho ke wahamba no Mr. Tumelo uya khona eMalberton ngabe kuyiqiniso lokho?
Not exactly, because ngangihamba nomthoko before ngithanda.
Not exactly. I could have traveled together with Mtoko if it was what I actually wished for.
Yeah, so why did you choose to go with Kelly instead of going with Mtoko?
ukuthi uhambe noKelly ungahambi noMthokozisi.
Angithi inhloso yami vele bengivakashele lapha ya.
No, I remember initially my intention was to visit that place.
And ngiyaqala futhi ukuza khona.
And that was also not the first time visiting that place.
Okay, now it is not factually correct that Mthokozisi's intention was to visit Senzo. Mthokozisi had no intentions of visiting Senzo. Mthokozisi was invited by Senzo to come to Mahamud's party. So it's incorrect for him to say the real reason why he didn't go with Mtoko was because his original intention was to visit Senzo. No, he was called by Senzo and invited to a party. I can't therefore say when a friend of mine calls me and invite me to a party, and then I go to that party, and as an eventuality happens, sometimes as friends, we do things to please our friends, depending on the level of friendship that you have and what is at stake at that particular moment in time, okay? But it cannot necessarily be said it was his intention, because for something to be your intention, there is a definition for the word that he's using, and that means he is the one who had planned to do this, to come to Johannesburg with an intention of sleeping over at Senzo's place, because he's claiming that that was the case, hence he went there. That's nothing to do with it, right? Nevertheless, let's proceed.
So that's the reason you wanted to spend that night with Kate.
Kwaba isona sizathu esenza ukuthi wena ufuna ukuqeda ubusuku bakho khona laphayana naye.
Angazi ukuthi ngizophendula ngithini, because ekugcineni nje wangangizela kwakuzobuya kanjani after sekwenzeke lento nama ngisekho futhi.
Now I don't know how should I answer that one since.
Okay, you heard him because this is answer. Okay, that's a low blow by Mshololo. So that's the reason why you decided to spend the night with Kelly. No, come on, get out of here. I mean, it's pretty clear the guy didn't spend the night with Kelly. The word again has a meaning to spend the night with somebody, male and female. And the insinuation by Mshololo is remarkable. Well, it's not remarkable. It's below the belt, really. It's what boxers will call you. It's a penalty. You've hit somebody underneath, beneath the belt, right? But I love how he answered it. I don't know how people would have responded to it or what people would have thought, because ultimately I had come here and now suddenly something like this happens and I suddenly disappear. What would have people thought? Even she, as Mshololo, would have asked, what, you came here by reason of invite of Kelly and Senzo, and then suddenly you don't sleep in their house after the event. Even they would have made an issue out of that. So I love how he has answered this one. I must be honest.
I had come here and the incident transpired. What picture would it cast if I were not to be found after the incident?
And when did you make the statements?
When's a lesser statement nini?
Sokuqala
Is it the
Because
first
meaning
statement?
has
There are
The
many
first-
statements that are
The
made.
first statement,
Statement
immediately
of-
after the incident.
Emva kokuthi kwenzakale lesigameko wasenza lesi statement.
Lapho ngizothanda because masibuya esibhedlela. Masibuya esibhedlela siye la kwenzeka khona lento. Khona nomunye uphoyisa wayebhale ngibuza. So angazi noma kwakuyi statement naleso.
I would be a bit unsure about that because even when we came back from the hospital, and there is one police official that was asking me questions, and he was writing something or she was writing something. So I cannot say as to whether was that now a statement or what.
Okay, did he ask you to sign any document
Wakutshela ukuthi mhlawumbe kube ne-document ethize oyisayinayo
at that time?
ngaleso sikhathi.
No, wayengibuza nje ngento enzile abhale phansi but angikhumbuli ngisayini.
I do not remember signing any document. All that he was doing was interviewing me about what transpired there.
So it means you did not sign any statement that night?
Lobo busuku azange usayine statement.
Angizange ngisayini.
That is correct. I never signed.
And from Exhibit V1, you only signed on the following day, which is 27th.
Wasayina nge 27. Qhamuka-ke kuleso statement esithi viewer.
Yes, ngiyakhumbula sase police station.
Yes, I remember we were at the police station at Flores.
And from the date of incident up to the time when you made the statement on the following day, you were with Miss Kelly Khumalo, Miss Zandi Khumalo.
Sonke lesikhathi
Correct.
emva kwethu kwenzakale lesigameko kufika ngalesi sikhathi uzophana statement sakhe mafuyise.
Okay, Mthokozisi gave the statement when he came back from the hospital. Why am I calling Tumelo Mthokozisi? Maybe I liked him talk, ne? Okay, but nevertheless, Tumelo gave the statement to the police when they arrived at home. The fact that he didn't sign it doesn't mean he didn't give it. He did give a statement. And the question should be to the police whenever the opportunity arises to say, how is it that you take a statement from one of the people that were inside the house and yet you never get them to sign the statement? Because at that particular moment, everything is fresh of what has happened in their mind. And you take a statement, you write it down and you don't give it to them to sign. Why? And you commission it. So the police have dropped the ball there, but this got nothing to do with Tumelo. Now, listen to where she's now going. She's discarding, obviously, that statement that was given because it was not signed, and to her it means it was not given, which is incorrect. And then she goes on to build this case, which I think the judge, based on his own remarks, has rejected. But let's already in his mind, it's pretty clear to me when you listen to his remarks. But let's proceed.
Ukuluko unaye uMiss Kelly Khumalo noMiss Zandi Khumalo.
Yabo ngisho kanjani.
Yes, I would say so.
Okay. And obviously you discussed about the shooting incident, which was traumatic to you guys.
Sobala-ke ukuthi nakhuluma ngaleso sigameko sokudutshulwa ngoba-ke wawushadekile oba nani-shadekile.
Not exactly because indlela oyisho ngakho not exactly because kwakuleke kufika abantu so nesimo engangikuzona mangakutshela nje iqiniso nokulala ngangisaba ngisho ukuvala amehlo.
Not exactly as to how you are putting it now, because
You see, he didn't answer Mshololo's question. At least I wouldn't have been satisfied with that answer. The question is, you guys spent the whole night together and you were sharing with one another what happened, what transpired, how is it affecting you, and how you feel about it. Now he's saying not exactly, because even he couldn't sleep or close his eyes. That's not what Mshololo asked. Did you or did you not discuss with Zandi and Kelly about what happened to Senzo before you literally, for the whole night or how many ever hours that you spent with them and the whole morning, and Makhumalo for that matter, because she was in that house, and then you went to the police to give a statement? That's the question. But let's continue and see if Mshololo is happy with that answer.
there were instances or intervals of the arrival of other people as well. Even myself, the state I was in, I couldn't even wink a little.
Let's try, Mr. Madlala, to answer what has been asked. If I want to ask about your condition, I will ask that. But for now, my question is, obviously from the time of the incident up to the time when you made the statement, you'll discuss this case. You'll discuss the traumatic incident we have just gone through, because we were sitting down discussing directly or indirectly.
Manje asiphendule lokho ke obuzwa khona. Zama ukuphendula lokho. Kanti ke ukusuka ngalesi sikhathi kwenzakala lesigameko ukufika ke leso sikhathi ke uzophana nge-statement May 27 October 2014. Ubunaye kakhulukazi ubani uKelly naye uZandi Khumalo. Enibeni lokunixoxa ke ngokuthi ke lesi sigameko saba kuhlungu kangakanani wanisandiphatha kanjani ukuthi mhlambe wamtshela umuntu ingqo okanye wezwa mhlambe bona beloko bekhuluma kodwa ke lento yakhulumeka.
No, isikhathi esiningi advocate nje sorry ukuthi uphendule ngalento. Isikhathi esiningi Kelly ubeyivalele ekamereni. Then mase kufike lawo abantu abeza kuyena njengoba ngingachaza phambili kwafika noChiko khona umfana wafika no Akhumuzi babefika nje baningi. Babefika bebaningi abantu lapha.
What I can say to you, advocate, that Kelly most of the times she would lock herself in the bedroom, and as I've indicated that there are a number of people that would also frequently be arriving there, and the likes of Chico Twala also arrived. One young man also arrived there. Akumzi also. Then it was uzophuma ke ababone then aphinde futhi.
You know, it's rather strange that this answer is given by Tumelo, because the people that were in that house was Tumelo, Khumalo, Kelly, and Zandi, and whoever else he's not mentioning. But to the people that to the extent of the people that he has mentioned, all these individuals were there. Now, when he answers, he says Kelly kept on locking herself in the room and would only come out when there are people who are visiting. But the question to him was, have you discussed with the occupants of the house what happened to Senzo prior to going and giving the testimony as to how it has affected all of you jointly and severally? That's the question. That includes Khumalo and Zandi, who, according to his own testimony, were not closing themselves in any bedroom. So he is avoiding to answer the question here, which gives a level of insincerity. And again, if I can see it, I'm sure the court can see it. And I would hope Mshololo would have pressed on this. I do not know if she has, because I have not necessarily listened to this portion of the video. Let's proceed.
Yes, and then Kelly would come out of the bedroom and entertain those visitors and then go back again into the bedroom.
Okay.
And her mother was also instrumental in preparing food, because myself during that time...
They were feeding you with food?
At that time I did not want food. They would ask me as to whether am I not hungry.
Oh, okay. So they were offering you. They were doing some favors to you.
I don't understand you.
Offering food.
Now, how do you bring favor into
and
this?
And also now? Offering you accommodation.
Accommodation
I have already explained to you that as far as the accommodation is concerned, that is Senzo's place.
Okay, Mshololo was supposed to press there. She did not press because she was caught by this silliness that she's now practicing here. Oh, they offered you food. That's how we as Africans behave. We are very charitable individuals, even in our poverty. So when a person has come to your place, you do offer them something to drink, which is tea, coffee, and maybe some biscuits or bread, whatever you have at your disposal. So that for me is a non-issue. And she missed an opportunity of pressing the right question here. I hope she'll still ask the question, because you see, she's focusing on Kelly in her mind. What about Zandi and Khumalo as well as Tumelo? Because those three were also occupants. When they were seated there and Kelly has closed herself in her room, they know why Kelly has closed herself there. What were they discussing? Because that's her initial question. Have you discussed the case of what has transpired whilst you were all in the house prior to going and giving? And this is important for the court. Why? Because then it will tell us how much coaching did these people get to get their stories to sound the same. So she's departing now from that line of questioning when she's behaving like this, because she's talking about favors. There was no favor done by giving Tumelo food, because that's how we Africans behave. And indeed, he's answered it correctly to say even the accommodation, there was no favor done there, because he's already explained he was invited by Senzo and Kelly. So where was he supposed to sleep? He's already answered that, at least to my satisfaction.
And I'm still at Senzo's place.
And it is your evidence also in chief that the person who had deposited money for you in order to be able to come to Joburg, it was Miss Kelly Khumalo.
Wakusho ke ebufakazini bakho bokuqala ukuthi umuntu wadepositela imali kwaba uye uMiss Kelly Khumalo.
Yes, wayengekwazi uSenzo because the day babezodlala Saturday.
Yes, Senzo would not be able to do it because they were going to play on that day.
Don't belong, Mr. Madlala. If
Ngabe
the
bonke.
answer is yes, just say yes.
Uma
The person
impendulo
who
ukuthi
deposited
yebo.
money for you to come to Joburg, it was Miss Kelly Khumalo. Yes.
Umuntu wakufakela imali yokuthi uze la eGoli kwaba uMiss Kelly Khumalo. Kunjalo?
But it's disingenuous to say he should say yes or no to a question that whose answer is not yes or no, because the purpose of this trial is to establish the truth, not to get wrong people jailed for Senzo's murder. And this type of line of questioning, to say a person must give a yes or no when the answer is not an easy yes or no. And how do I know that? From his own what you call statement in chief. It was Senzo who called him. It was Senzo who asked if he has received the money yet, and then he said no, and then suddenly the money came in and he saw it was deposited by Kelly before Senzo could call back again. But which then means Senzo gave instructions to Kelly, because now he's explaining that to the court, because the court wants the truth, because Senzo was playing during that day, hence he couldn't deposit the money himself. That's important information for the court that is seeking the truth. But a court that is not seeking the truth but is seeking to trap individuals so that they become how can I say ships to the slaughter for something they have not done, then it will ask questions like this. For me, I don't appreciate that. I don't think it's consistent with the Constitution, and it's not consistent also with another court case which, okay, I may not be able to refer to it off my head right now, but I do think that when Advocate Baloyi presents, the judge refers to that very court case, that the purpose of the judge is not just sitting there as a chair or as an umpire. The judge has to see to it that justice is served, is achieved in this court case. Hence, he keeps on interjecting from time to time to guide these guys in the way they should go, these advocates. Let's proceed.
Ukuphendula kanjani because mayiqala lento kufonela uSenzo so ngazi ukuthi yonke le nto iphuma kuyena ukuthi ifaka ubani kanjani angihlangene
I don't know how to answer you on that, Lord.
because
Because
uzwile sengikushilo
all these things started with Senzo, being involved in it. I understand that it was Senzo that have arranged that I should come, and as to who actually had the opportunity to go and deposit, that is something that I cannot really understand.
Was it not your evidence during examination in chief that the person who deposited money for you to come to Joburg was Miss Kelly Khumalo?
Akusibona ubufakazi bakho ukuthi umuntu owafaka imali yokuthi wena uze kwaba uKelly Khumalo.
ngikushilo lokho
I did say so.
Okay, are you changing it?
We have changed
So
our
you're speaking-
ayikho into la ngizoyishintsha advocate
There is nothing that is contained in here which I will change.
So
I
you
will
agree
never
with
change.
me that another offer that was given to you by Miss Kelly Khumalo is the money that she deposited to you in order.
No, Mshololo, that is poverty. That is serious poverty of your line of questioning here. I'm not sure why you insist, because you don't have a point. Unless you have seriously misunderstood his evidence in chief. In his evidence in chief, he did indicate that this is Senzo's money. It is Senzo who initiated all of this. However, because Senzo was playing football, or soccer as we call it in South Africa, on that day, there's no way he was going to go and do the deposit. If I ask my wife to deposit money to someone else's account who had asked me for money, that person is not going to thank my wife for it. They're going to thank me. They can see that my wife's name is appearing as in the deposit, but they're not going to text my wife back. They may not even have my wife's number. They're going to text me back and say thank you very much. So it doesn't, I'm not sure the line of questioning, and I can't really see the point to your line of questioning, except that you are being, it's evidence that you were not listening when the evidence in chief was led. You were busy making notes. And that is a serious error, because I've seen quite a lot of this happening in our courts, where people can get away with murder because the counsels were not listening. They were paying attention to their own, okay, let me not say that. But it's very important in communication to listen.
To come.
As a doctor, I think, with respect, I think counsel is misunderstanding the witness. The witness did say he was in communication with the deceased, and the deceased inquired as to whether he received the money, and the money then reflected, and the deceased then phoned him thereafter. And the witness has said he's been under the impression that it's the deceased who arranged that.
Precisely.
Yes,
Precisely.
that's how I understood the evidence.
Thank you, my lord. But the person who did the actual deposit was Kate.
Whose money was it? That's the point. Whose money was it?
I've always said Mshololo was the cream of the crop in terms of the rest of the lawyers that were there. She's disappointing me though in this regard, because how does she miss whose money is it? You get the point? And that she wants to make an issue out of something, in my view, she shouldn't be making an issue. She's got quite a lot of things that she could extract from this witness in a legitimate manner.
As far as you are concerned,
Yes,
It was Senzo Meyiwa.
let's make some progress, please.
That's disappointing, Mshololo.
Okay. When you arrived inside the house at the Khumalo's homestead now, you testified that you consumed some.
You see, now she forgot about the valid point that she raised, where they coached one another. She left that point without finalizing it. She did not corner Tumelo to get to the point that whilst they were busy feeding one another with Zandi, with Khumalo and himself, what were they discussing? Where were they sitting? They were sitting in the same place. They were discussing this very, what you call, occurrence. She missed all of that, and she had the opportunity to unearth it, but she asked irrelevant questions. She got carried away. And this happens to all of us when we get carried away and asking irrelevant questions. This happens. Let's proceed.
Alcohol. Am I correct?
Manfika
That your
lapha
evidence.
kwakhomalo uye wafakaza ukuthi nena phuza utshwala wena beniphuza utshwala.
Yebo kunjalo.
Yes, it is so.
And it is also evidence that you only drank 2.
Ubufakazi bakho ukuthi
Did you say 2 or 3?
waphuza 2 noma 3.
So lesithatha ngathi lalingakapheli.
I did not finish the third one.
Okay. I'm going to show you the pictures of the evidence that was recovered by the police at the crime scene, and that evidence was taken into photo albums, and it's the evidence before this court as the only cans that were recovered inside the house.
Ngizokubonisa ke isithombe sengxenye zofakazi ezathola amaphoyisa uma amaphoyisa efika lapha. Kanti ke kwenziwa ke izithombe ngalezo ngxenye zofakazi.
Yebo.
Yibona kuphela ke ufakazi mayelana ke nokuthi kwathola khona lapha.
This is another line of questioning that I do not know what she thinks she's going to achieve about it, and I think it's ridiculous. But let us proceed.
Yibona ke ufakazi ukho.
Is it also evidence that all of you were inside the house were consuming alcohol?
Ubufakazi bakho
Or it was only you?
nonke bensendlini beniphuza utshwala nonke bensendlini.
No, I don't think umntwana angaphuza utshwala. I don't think umakhelwane engaphuzi nabantwana babengaphuzi.
No. I do not think that a child would have consumed liquor, and Mrs. Kelly Khumalo or Mrs. Kelly Khumalo Senior, she also was not drinking.
Tumelo is making some jokes now. Well, that's what you get, Mshololo, by asking foolish questions, to be honest with you. But nevertheless, let's hear, maybe you do have a point that I've completely missed out as to why you would ask this type of question that you're asking. It's common cause that they all drank. They all spoke to that in their evidence in chief. But the line of questioning is very important as to what is it that we are trying to unearth. We don't just ask questions in court that would lead to absolutely, how can I say, that would not help the court to achieve its intended purpose in the truth. Let's proceed.
Okay. Then tell us who were drinking.
Oh, bana uphuza utshwala.
It was yourself?
Lobu wena.
Zandi,
Was myself.
Kelly, Senzo, Mthobo.
Myself, Zandi, Kelly, Senzo, and Togo.
Okay. Excluding, except for the mother and the child.
Ngaphandle ke bomama
Ninga,
nengane.
yes.
That is correct.
So the cans that you had consumed will be more than the two that are depicted there, am I correct?
Ushuthi ke amakheni waphuzile andlula lawa abonakala le.
I mean all of you,
So nina nonke.
out of all the people who were drinking inside the
Nina
house.
nonke ke bemphuza lapha.
Yebo kunjani?
It is indeed so, yes.
So in other words, the amount of cans that are depicted in that picture does not reflect the correct amount of cans you had consumed, all of you inside the house.
Ushuthi ngamanye amazwi lokho kubonakala lapha ke akubonisi ke isithombe esiphelele o esimayelana ke notshwalo enaphuza ninonke bonke lokho utshwala.
Yebo uqinisile akubonisi lokho and akubonisi futhi lokho sababu sefridge. Akubonisi futhi noba sebulahliwa sebu-empty.
Yes, you're definitely right. It doesn't show even the liquor that was in the fridge, and as well as those that had already been discarded. It doesn't show. You are correct.
Is there anyone who will clean up, remove the empty cans as you were continuing drinking?
Ngabe khona umuntu obeloko esusa ke amakhena empty manje ukuqhubeka niphuza.
Ngiyacabanga kunjalo because sasingikaze ahlale la ma-cans phambi kwakho because enza ne-number. I don't think ayizohlala la phambi kwethu kanjalo.
I think it was so.
Because nokulandwa futhi ekitchen ayilandwa umuntu sasingabe siyilandela thina ayilandwa umuntu asilethele.
I think it was so. We couldn't just keep the empty cans there. And
Okay, let me just be sarcastic here, Mshololo. How do you suppose that 4 people, 4 adults, who at least according to their own testimony, have at least drank 2.5 to 3 cans each? And now when you look at what the police found on the scene, it's only 2 cans. How do you suppose the other cans? How do you suppose, or rather, what do you suppose happened to the other cans? Obviously, they were thrown in the garbage bin. Once again, when you even go to a place like a shibin or you go to a private household where people drink liquor, they don't fill up the table with empty cans, they throw them away. That goes without saying. Why? It's obvious that these guys, even if they had planned, which this by no means this trial has gotten to a place where it says Senzo's murder was planned, but even if they had planned it, they were not going to keep the liquor empty bottles empty cans on top of the table. Hence I'm saying this line of questioning, I don't understand what does it seek to achieve, because it's just part of the normal process. When people drink or when people eat food, they don't leave dirty plates on the table, they remove them. Now Tumelo must now remember who was removing them and for what purpose. I don't understand, but she'll make us understand.
even going to the kitchen to get the liquor, it wasn't ourselves that would go and fetch the liquor from the kitchen. Somebody was bringing the liquor to us.
Okay, to be specific, did you see anyone removing cans?
Ethi ngisho kanjalo uke wabona umuntu esusa amakheni lapho?
Cha.
No.
Up to the time when you left to the hospital?
Nize nihambe ke niye esibhedlela.
Yebo.
Yes.
And at the time, by the time when you left to the hospital, there is no one who cleaned the floor inside the lounge.
Ukufika leso sikhathi senihamba niye esibhedlela akekho umuntu oke waklina khona lapha yana phansi
Where you had been sitting before the incident.
ngase lounge. Ngabe niloko nihleli khona phambi kokuthi kwenzakale lesigameko.
anginayo impendulo yalapho because thina saphuthumisa usenzo and then ukuthi kwenzakalani after sambile angeke ngakwazi lokho.
I do not have the short.
That's not what she asked you, man. Before you left for the hospital, did anybody clean where you were seated? That's the question.
Of that because we rushed Senzo to the hospital. As to what happened after we had left, no, I do not have any knowledge of
No,
that.
my question is, before you left to the
Mina
hospital,
umbuzo wami ukuthi angokuba nihambe niye esibhedlela.
did you see if there is anyone, try to recall, did you see if there is anyone who cleaned the floor?
Kugabe angokuba
At the
nizohamba
lounge.
esibhedlela.
Hayi anginotisanga lokho.
I did not notice that.
Okay. You furthermore, when you were during cross-examination by one of the defense counsel, you said how possible that Ngashe would have chased, followed the suspect. What is it that they were carrying? Do you remember that answer that you gave? Yeah.
Bebephethe ini onqashe mabagijimisa yes.
Yeah, you see here, Tumelo dropped the ball seriously. But nevertheless, let's see how Mshololo will make the most out of this. Because when he made that statement, I thought to myself, okay, what is he talking about? Because in my head, there's always been a question to say, some intruder wearing a hoodie, not wearing a hoodie, with a hat, dreadlocked, carrying a firearm, comes in, and then is followed by someone wearing a hoodie, carrying a weapon, which Tumelo cannot explain, but Mtogozisi said it was a knife. Now, they then demand certain things from the people who are sitting inside the house, right? And then suddenly, Longwe jumps off his chair, charges towards the guy that's carrying a firearm, pushes him off the side without giving him the cell phone or the money for which he has asked. He is dead meat if he did that in an event where people were carrying a firearm and someone else was carrying a knife behind the guy carrying the firearm, right? He pushes away the one who's carrying a firearm, but he does nothing to the one carrying a knife, and somehow he makes it to get out of the door alive. That for me is incredible. That's how I'm going to say it at this particular juncture. Then we get to Senzo standing up, charging a person who's carrying a firearm. And then they all stand up and they start charging towards this person, and then they see that there is a second intruder. This story does not make sense at all if none of you are carrying your own firearms. You get the point? Then he goes and says, how will the Ngashes pursue the intruders when they were not carrying any weapon? What were they carrying? This was his question. For me, he dropped the ball seriously when he asked that question, because that question comes back to what has been a question in my mind. What business was Senzo having? What business did Senzo have pursuing someone who's carrying a firearm? The story of Longwe doing the same and getting away with it, to me, does not make sense at all. At all. There are universes, hypothetically, in which this would make sense. Let me give one. If Longwe is the one, because he arrived late there, and it was not so long after he arrived when these guys came in, if therefore these guys have anything to do with him, this was something that they had planned, then of course his exit would have been welcomed. That's the only universe to me that is perceivable, in which Longwe would have been allowed to live like that. Or perhaps the other universe is that the gun was not loaded, but we know Senzo is not here, therefore the gun was loaded. Can you see that? Because sometimes these chance takers who are not professional in robberies and all that, they do take a chance with an empty firearm when they're desperate for something. But we know Senzo is not here and he was killed by a bullet, therefore that firearm was loaded. And Longwe would have soon found out that the firearm was loaded if he was not party to. So I don't understand even when I try to create different universes in which the possibility of this occurring with Longwe getting away with it, how would it have been possible? I can't understand that. But then what worsens the situation is Tumelo's question. to say, in which universe, of course that's not how he puts it, but his words is, how is it possible that the Ngashes would have pursued the intruders without carrying anything? What were they carrying? Well, you're not gonna come up with such questions without a good lawyer picking up on it. And remember what I've said, Mshololo may not be doing well here, but she's still the best in my eyes, comparatively speaking to the people who are in this court in terms of the questions that she's asked. She's pretty bright, and that is evident. Yeah, sure, she makes errors from time to time. We all do, because we're not perfect. But to me, she's a brilliant attorney, a brilliant advocate. Of course, there's a lot of gap for areas for her to learn and grow, but the same is true for every human being, to perfect your craft. Let's hear then what Tumelo will be saying here. It was fascinating that Mshololo just touched on this subject, because I expected her to. None of the other lawyers, by the way, who were doing the cross-examination touched on this subject.
Yeah, just correct me if I'm putting it the other way around.
Yes.
You remember that?
Yes, I remember that.
So in other words, you were saying, how would Ngashes be able to trace an armed person when they were not armed? Am I correct?
I only asked what were they in possession of.
Why did you ask that?
Before he answers why did he ask that question, it's the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. He's just now trying to play games and hopefully that you are asleep and therefore you don't follow up. Good follow up. Why did you ask that question?
Ngibuzisa ukuthi kunzima ukuthi ungajaha umuntu ophethe isibhamu ungaphethe lutho.
I'm asking that question because it is difficult for you to chase a person who is in possession of the firearm and you are not even in possession of any weapon.
If it's difficult for a
Yangena intaka endlini. Oh my goodness. The mouse has come to the trap, right? And sought to eat the cheese, not recognizing that all of this is a trap. But let's get to hear what Mshololo is saying here.
person to chase someone who is armed, and when that person is not armed, how come Longwe Twala was able to push an armed person and run away?
Manje ke uyakusho lokho ukuthi kunzima ukuthi umuntu angagijimisa umuntu ophethe isibhamu yena engaphethe lutho kuyena. Kuze kanjani ke ukuthi uLongwe Twala aphushe lo muntu bephethe isibhamu kodwa kungukuthi uLongwe Twala yena ubengaphethe isikhali kuyena.
And also secondly, before you answer, just hang in there if the court allows me. How come also the people who were not armed inside the house were able to attack the alleged intruder having a fire?
Manje nabo labo bantu abangasendlini abebengaphethe lutho kuze kanjani ukuthi ke bona bayeke bahlasele umuntu.
You see here, Mshololo was on point here. You know, she was just guns blazing. For me, listening to this was like one of her finest moments, a moment that I was proud to listen to an advocate discharging her responsibilities, right? I don't know how the others missed this, but I just think thumbs up, Mshololo, for asking that question. We may not be happy with the outcome, but thumbs up for asking the question and the manner in which you asked it. Very proud of you. Let's continue.
Okanye baphushe umuntu owayephethe isikhali bona ukuthi ungaphethe lutho.
Yebo ngiyabuza ke siqale ngalokho kwalonga nje.
Yes, I hear you. Let's start.
Lokwalonga ngifana nawe nami advocate. Nami ngisazibuza la namhlanje.
Well,
Ukuthi wayenza kanjani leyo nto. Ngiyafana nawe nami.
I'm just like you on that one. As for how he did it, I'm still asking myself that question. How did Longwe do that?
But it's impossible for a person who is not armed to push someone who is armed, approach and push someone who is armed.
Akhonakala ukuthi umuntu ongaphethe lutho kuyena aphushe umuntu ophethe isikhali kuyena.
Ngiyajabulela ke lo part ngoba lo mntu akashoni usakhona. kufanele eze la azophendula yonke into ukuthi wayenza kanjani yena.
You see, I like that part because the person to whom this refers is still alive. He's not dead. He can come and answer for himself.
Don't worry about that person. He's coming. I'm asking now, it's your turn to answer your question. You had said.
But before Mshololo continues, I hope she didn't miss what Mtogo's Mtogo. It must be that I really liked Mtogo's, or I got to like him in his testimony. Now, but the point is this: Utumelo is saying here that I know this is one thing you've got to ask from Longwe, because even I am asking myself, how did he do it? So here he's literally pushing Longwe under the bus. No doubt in my mind about it. He is saying, I don't trust that young man. He had everything to do with those individuals coming into the house. He's inferring it. Well, at least you can make that deduction from his submission, because he's saying Lomund Lowo is still alive, right? And he must come to the court to answer for himself. I don't know how he could do. Remember, the theory of it being impossible is a hypothetical theory of Tumelo. It's not a hypothetical theory of the court. No, it's Tumelo who said, how could the Ngashes who were unarmed pursue an armed person? And then when he's asked the question, he says, dealing with the Longwe issue, it would really be interesting to find out from him how did he do it. Meaning, Tumelo doesn't believe that Longwe is not party to the plan of the intruders that came in there. We can make that deduction. I hope Mshololo did not miss that, but let's proceed.
You had said.
But most years to Walake, when before I do.
No, I cannot answer for him. If you ask me how was he able to push him, and yet you are asking that to me, you should ask that to him and not to Tumelo.
I'm asking from what we have said in this court. And I'm asking your understanding to what we have said to this court, to say it would have been difficult for Ngashe to follow and chase armed suspects. Do you understand where I'm coming from?
agijimisa okanye onqashe bagijimisa kanjani ke abantu abaphethe ikhali bona bengaphethe.
So in other words, I am saying it would also have been difficult for Longwe to approach an armed person. Same as Ngashes.
Wona lo mqondo bese ngizalana ke kuLongwe. Ngithi na kuLongwe ke bekuzobanzima ukuthi azophusha umuntu ophethe isikhali kuyena kungukuthi yena ke bengaphethe.
100% right.
As a court prisoner, the witness says it happened, as to now why should he now cast his mind back and say it would have been difficult? I don't think it's a fair question. Maybe my learned friend can leave it for argument.
Thank you, my lord. If my learned friend is giving the answer on behalf of the witness, I take it, my lord, and I accept it. It's more clear. It's more clear now. The answer is clear. That's what I wanted. Thank you, my lord.
I don't see the validity of this objection because it is the witness submission to the court that the Ngashes could not have pursued some armed individuals when they themselves were not armed. And it is the witness's testimony in his chief evidence that Longwe did the very thing that the witness is submitting to the court that he doubts very much if the Ngashes would have done. And he said, so what is the court supposed to believe then? Is the court supposed to believe him that Longwe pushed someone aside? Or is the court supposed to believe him when he's saying that the Ngashes couldn't pursue someone who was armed? You get the point? So I don't see the validity of this appealing. I hope of this objection. I hope this objection is overruled by the judge. Let's proceed.
kanti anginayo inkinga ukuphendula advocate ngirelaxe kakhulu kubuyazi nesikhathi sonke anginayo inkinga ngingafuna wathi ngiyaphenke ngivele ngithule la ngoba but ngiyakwazi ukuziphendulela.
If you knew, I'm so well relaxed. I'm able to answer for myself.
But into engayicela ka-advocate
Mr. Madlala.
angabuzi kakhulu ngey'statements zabantu.
Mr. Madlala.
Uzobuza ama-questions.
Mr. Madlala,
Yes.
please behave yourself.
Are we part?
Behave yourself.
Ngokunjalo nawe advocate.
Mr.
Even yourself,
Baloyi
advocate.
is representing the state. He has raised an objection to the court. We are dealing with the objection which we have nothing to say about it.
Yabona ke obabaloyi khona nje ukhathazeka ukuthize akuphakamisile okanye isiphakamiso asilethela enkantolo ke okwamanje sibhekene leso siphakamiso esiqhamuka ngapha ke ubabaloyi ke
Ngiyakuzwa
Do you understand that? Yes.
ngiyakuzwa lokho.
Yes.
But hayi ukuthi mhlambe ngiyaphendulela. Mina ngiable ukuziphendulela. Ngiyaziphendulela mina advocate.
But you know, emotional intelligence is very important. Mshololo is now engaging in a discussion she shouldn't be engaging on. Firstly, I saw that she was being emotional by saying if the advocate Baloyi is answering for the witness, that she will accept as an answer to the court, thereby denying the judge the opportunity to indicate whether he overrules or he sustains the objection, because it's an invalid objection. But when the advocate does what Mshololo does, he's taking away the court's response. So the court doesn't have to respond because this is something she's going to deal with in her closing remarks, in the arguments, right? That being the case, now she's getting into a debate with a witness. A witness to me who clearly has been properly trained this time around, because I've listened to this court case before when it was being chaired by Judge Maumen. The point though is this, Tumelo has certainly grown in terms of how he is dealing with Mshololo. Tumelo was a very angry person the last time, was easily provoked by Mshololo and got into corners that he wouldn't, he has completely refused to get into in this trial. So what Mshololo is doing right now, trying to behave as the court itself, because it's the court that's supposed to say this, that answer the question being asked by the advocate, this and this. So she's playing the role of the court by telling the witness that there is now an objection and the court this and this. She's trying to play a mother figure to patronize the witness, in hopes that she's going to get the witness upset and then the witness self-implicate himself. Observe what the witness says here. Ngokunjalo nakuwe advocate. Meaning, right now you are misbehaving yourself by talking to me in the manner that... And to me, he seems to win every time he does this to Mshololo. I'm not sure, Yena, why hasn't she observed that this guy is few steps ahead of her in the answers that he gives. His answers seems to be deliberate. His answers seems to have been rehearsed somewhere. He seems to have been coached. Even the mistakes that he makes, to the extent of what he remembers, the witness carrying and not carrying, and what he saw and what he didn't see, it seems as though those are deliberate errors. That it doesn't appear that they have rehearsed. But to me, if you compare his answers to that of Mthokozis, they are so identical, it's unreal on fundamentals. It's unreal. But nevertheless, let's proceed.
It's not that I cannot answer for myself.
Yes.
I can answer for myself. Just relax, advocate.
If there is an objection, Mr. Madlala, you wait and you keep quiet.
Yabona uma ngabe khona ukhize okhathaza omnye wa abameli lana wena uthi ukulinda kancane ukuze inkantolo ikwazi ukuqhubekisa ke yazakala wena ke.
But that's a role of the court, Mshololo, to tell a witness to behave themselves when the court believes the witness is not behaving themselves. It's not your role, because it's patronizing when it comes from you. Right? The court is there for that purpose. It's patronizing when it comes from the advocate to the witness. Nevertheless, let's proceed.
Yes. Until I ask you a question, then you will then answer.
Okay, guys, so I'm just gonna go up and close the video here because I don't want to make a video that will be much longer. We are already sitting at 114 minutes right now. What I would like is a feedback, an indication if you have enjoyed this layman's analysis, and if indeed you have, then of course I can go ahead and make similar videos going on in the future. Do not forget to like the video and to subscribe to the channel. It assists with the algorithms in YouTube and also to